Recognizing the member for Peace River North.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and my one colleague behind me for... all right, there they all are. Thanks, Honourable Speaker. I'm pleased to stand here today and talk about supports for BC businesses. We are all aware of, and I cannot imagine what the last 20 months must have been like for businesses in our communities as they've navigated the uncertainty of the pandemic and the economic upheavals that it has brought with it. As COVID stripped away tourism dollars, limited seating in restaurants, among other restrictions, disrupted interprovincial travel, and brought unprecedented challenges to our industries dependent on international trade and commerce, we debated the difficult rollout of provincial supports to our businesses desperately struggling to keep their doors open and staff employed. Although we have made progress, these challenges are far from over for many in our province, and I want to take this opportunity to reflect on the current situation and challenges that many British Columbians are still experiencing today. This time last year, when our province was in the throngs of the second wave and restrictions were at the height, all of us undoubtedly hoped that this fall would be different. It would be a time of recovery and relief for our province. But it has been very different than that. Last fall, before the vaccine was available, all communities across the province faced similar challenges, and the same level of restrictions were put in place to help mitigate the spread of COVID. But the situation is much different today. Throughout the Lower Mainland and on Vancouver Island, businesses are beginning to find some solace and are seeing a slow and gradual return to some normalcy. But this, Honourable Speaker, is not the case for every community across British Columbia. In the Northern Health region, businesses continue to face a fresh round of circuit breaker restrictions, but can no longer depend on the original supports and grants that were put in place throughout the province when the original circuit breaker restrictions were announced. Despite assertions that supports are still available to these businesses today, the province's doors seem to have closed now on many businesses that are reaching out for help. For instance, the circuit breaker grant closed June 4th. The Small Business Recovery Grant closed July 2nd. And the Launch Online Grant ended September 30th. And although there is a digital boot camp available for small businesses, this will do little to provide immediate relief that the businesses desperately need today. Prior to the availability of the vaccine, COVID impacted every single business in every community at the same time, and our health response and resulting supports for businesses at that time were as universal as the pandemic itself was. But now that there is a more regionalized response, which is what we're seeing, in place to address the situation in each individual health authority, so too should the economic supports be regionalized. It's that simple, Honourable Speaker. It's not enough to assume that because supports were once available that these businesses now have the runway to stay afloat, because that is not the reality that we're facing today. That is certainly not the reality that we are hearing in the North and communities throughout the interior. Even in regions of our province where businesses are experiencing reduced restrictions, many are still barely managing to stay afloat as they continue to face labour shortages and reduced revenue. And in regions where the restrictions are even worse, this new wave of circuit breaker measures without supports could be the final nail in the coffin for many of our businesses, on top of the ones that have already closed, Mr. Speaker. One business owner in Fort St. John told me recently, and I'll quote, "It will only be a matter of time before businesses like ours close its doors due to bankruptcy or ownership exhaustion," end quote. Ownership exhaustion. Working around the clock, remortgaging homes, on top of just the sheer stress of being a business owner, trying to imagine what tomorrow might bring. Ownership exhaustion. That same owner told me they've never had to lay off staff before the pandemic, but they are now looking at having to do it for a third time in the last couple of years. It's not enough to tell these businesses that the province will be monitoring the situation. What are we waiting for? You can ask any MLA in our health region, and they can provide you with hundreds of examples of businesses that have made it very clear that the time for waiting and monitoring is over. The need for support is imminent. Otherwise, we will see further permanent closures in businesses and the further losses of jobs in our more rural and northern communities. Honourable Speaker, these businesses are doing their part to help prevent the spread of COVID by abiding by the circuit breaker restrictions, and they are losing crucial revenue because of it. It's time that we show them that Victoria, that this place is listening to our rural communities and that help will be there for them when they need it. I'm urging the government to reopen circuit breaker supports for struggling businesses, especially the ones in the north, so that we don't have to see them close their doors for good. These are the businesses that support our people, support our community's clubs, support our community sporting groups, and really are a crucial part of the fabric that makes up what our communities are. We need to stand up and support our communities, Honourable Speaker.
Recognizing the member for Vancouver Falls Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you to the member opposite. The recent release of Stats Canada's Labour Force Survey contains some good news. The Labour Force Survey for October solidifies BC's position as leading Canada's economic recovery, with another 10,400 jobs added throughout the province last month. The BC vaccine card has created stability in our economy, allowing businesses to remain open while reassuring British Columbians as we gradually return to normal. BC has the second lowest unemployment rate after Manitoba at 5.6%, and we continue to lead all provinces with a job recovery rate of 101.9%. There are now 51,000 more British Columbians employed than at the start of the pandemic. That's a direct result of people, businesses, communities working together through these tough times. However, the effects of the pandemic will continue to be felt for many months. As we've done since the beginning of this pandemic, our government will be there to support people and businesses as we build back a strong recovery for everyone. Our job recovery rate regionally continues to be strong, led by the Thompson Okanagan at 107.6%. Other notable job recovery rates are Prince George at 107.1%, Vancouver Island 105.8%, Caribou 105%, Kootenays at 100.3%, and Lower Mainland at 100.9%, Vancouver 101.4%, and North Coast Nechako at 100%. Our government remains committed to lifting people disproportionately affected by this pandemic. There's a lot of talk among economists currently about letters. Will a recovery be a U, a V, an L, a K? A K-shaped recovery tells the story that those at the top experience economic gains, while those in the middle and in the lower sections experience economic decline. And this is what we're fighting against. I got to do some of that work in my role as Parliamentary Secretary for Technology and Innovation. I was asked to redesign the Innovator Skills Initiative, or ISI, and consulted with more than 30 stakeholder groups. We listened to both equity-seeking groups and to businesses, and the redesign reflects this. Through a partnership between the BC Government and Innovate BC, MyTax, and the Information and Communications Technology Council, or ICTC, 3,000 people from underrepresented groups will have a chance to get their first job in the tech sector through this ISI program. The program provides $10,000 grants to businesses and nonprofits to help underrepresented people get their first job in the tech sector or in a tech-enabled role. And the program also helps businesses and nonprofits facing skills shortages to grow and expand. As in years prior, the program supports businesses to hire students for paid internships and co-op roles, but in listening to businesses and participants, we have now opened the program to people that have industry-recognized credentials, micro-credentials certifications, such as the digital marketing or web design certifications. The province's investment of $15 million is being supplemented by MyTax and ICTC, bringing the total investment of this program to $29 million. Grants will help cover a new employee's salary for a 4-month period, and the program offers valuable paid work experience that can lead people to long-term employment in this sector. Grants are available to BC businesses of all sizes, and applications are open at the Innovate BC website, but apply soon. I understand it's getting full. In the October Labour Market Report, I was also pleased to see that employment among BC's Indigenous population is 10.6% above pre-pandemic levels, and unemployment rate for people of colour continues to decline in BC, now sitting at 1.5 percentage points lower than the national average. These positive results tell us a story. They tell us that our stable, inclusive approach to dealing with the pandemic is working. By providing more supports per capita for people and businesses than any other province, workers and business owners are confident about our vision for the future, which doesn't leave anyone behind. And on a last note, as we approach the holiday season, please consider shopping locally to support our BC businesses. Gift certificates to restaurants, theatre, attractions are all great gifts, and they contribute to supporting a sector that has been hard hit, allowing us to be part of the economic recovery. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member. Member for Peace River North.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thanks to the member of Vancouver Falls Creek for her comments. Unfortunately, missed a lot of what I was saying in my comments. We've been talking about, and you know, the member can paint a picture of recovery and quote the labour force survey, talk about stability in the economy. The reality is the regionalized piece of this is what we're not seeing on the ground. The supports are not in place to support the areas within the areas that are under the circuit breakers. As I've outlined also in my previous statement, there is without a doubt an urgent necessity for additional regional supports, and it won't be enough just to reintroduce previous circuit breaker grants. We need to reevaluate, we need to revise the supports, and we need to meet the specific needs of the businesses that are impacted the most within those regions. As I iterated before, it's not enough to simply assume that these businesses had access to the first round of grants, because they did not. Many communities in northeastern British Columbia and along the whole eastern border share ties with Alberta communities, and their businesses have been locked out of both BC and Alberta supports as a result. In fact, I spoke to a few business owners in Fort St. John who are ineligible to receive the BC grants because of partial ownership in Alberta, but they are paying taxes here in British Columbia. One of the local businesses was completely excluded from access to BC grants because one of the owners had just moved to Grand Prairie. There are countless examples of this from BC businesses located near the Alberta border. Businesses that now have no hope whatsoever of receiving supports from the province they operate, but pay taxes into. We also have to consider the industries and economies and the communities that are impacted. Businesses in the Peace region, for example, depend heavily on tourism for their revenue and will not see a return to revenue until we see a full return to international travel and tourism, which could be months or even years away. To deliver supports that meet the needs of our businesses, proper consultation is absolutely critical. Government needs to engage with businesses impacted by the circuit breaker measures so that we can develop a better understanding of the barriers that keep them from accessing the supports and get the help that they need. Government should not only reintroduce but also redesign the support program so that we can ensure businesses across the province receive the help that they need to get on the road to real recovery for the future of their businesses. And I want to quote the member for Vancouver Falls Creek. She said, "Our government will be there to support." It's time for this government to show that they will indeed be there for our businesses. Thank you.